if the 49ers fall short, and that was kind of, the premise of our conversation on your channel. And I thought, that's a great premise because we can sit here and say, man, number 1D,
Yeah.
Give me a K, way to go Shanahan. Give me a K, give me a Y, we could sit here and I could sit here and be like, hey, I kind of saw Brock Purdy was pretty, we could do that all day, or we could have kind of a little bit more useful conversation about the hurdles that stand between the Niners and this ring. The Niners are desperate for this ring. Kyle Shanahan, despite the job security that he probably has, is desperate for this ring. John Lynch, I think, is desperate for this ring. I know Jed is. Dr. John is. Talking to the players about the Pro Bowl, I get the feeling that this is a team that's very team oriented, and the Pro Bowl is like, I'm a Pro Bowl alternate. Great. That's what Ray said. I said, hey man, you made the Pro Bowl as an alternate. And he's like, yeah, as an alternate, man, I'm here for the Super Bowl. What is if I said to you, the number one thing standing between the 49ers and winning the 6th Lombardi, Grant, what would you say?
To me, it's two. I'll focus on the number one thing, but it's the same two things that pretty much held him back 3 years ago. The number one thing is Kyle. Kyle is his own worst enemy. He's the best, and he's Superman and Lex Luthor at the same time. He is impenetrable, and he has his own kryptonite. And I don't know, he's done it 3 times in his career where he has a double-digit lead late in the game, either in the Super Bowl or NFC Championship game, and he's stuck on 20 points. This offensive genius can't score anything in the fourth quarter, and they lose with 20 points. So I don't have any questions about the quarterback. I don't have any questions about the offense. The offensive line isn't great, but to me, the question is Kyle. Does he have some type of mental block or PTSD that gets him out of character at the end? And the other thing is on defense, the secondary. It got exploited by Mahomes. The Niners, they faced Justin Herbert, who didn't have his receivers. They really haven't faced an offense like they're going to face in the Super Bowl if they get there. And is it going to get exposed the way it seems like it might? But to me, again, the big thing is Kyle. As great as he can be, it seems like sometimes he's the only person who can stop him.
I'm going to piggyback that, and then Rye, I want your thoughts on this as well. But I'm going to piggyback that. To me, if you say, what's your biggest, what's your real criticism of Kyle Shanahan? One, I'm not yearning for another coach. I think he's a top tier coach. I think he's going to get it done. I do believe in him. But I would say both in the Ram game last year and in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, my biggest complaint was at the end of the game, I don't feel like Deebo Samuel touched the ball enough. And when I asked Kyle about it, he's like, well, that's not really typically how it works. You get into the game flow and, we're not counting touches. And I would love to see them map out, especially in their biggest games in Philly, if they're in Philly in the championship game, in, Glendale against whomever it is, Kansas City, Buffalo, whatever team is there. In the biggest games, I'd like to see them go into the game mapping out the number of touches they want for whoever their hot hand is. If it's Kittle, if it's Ayuk, if it's McCaffrey, if it's Deebo, I'd like to see them map that out and not get into a situation like the Ram game where we look up at the end of the game and say, man, Deebo didn't touch the ball for the final 13 minutes of the game. Or like Kansas City where Deebo, was the best player, probably the favorite to win the Super Bowl MVP at halftime. He got 2 touches the entire second half. To me, it's not just about play calling and play sequencing. It's about getting your personnel on the field usage in the key moments.
Personnel usage, absolutely.
I think that's been Andy Reid never gets to the end of now he doesn't have him anymore, but Andy Reid never used to get to the end of the game without Tyreek Hill having a certain number of touches. That's something I don't believe.
Or Travis Kelce. I would imagine you wouldn't have many big games in the 80s where it's like, hey, Jerry Rice didn't get the ball today. Bill, you forgot about Jerry. No, he didn't forget about Jerry. And sometimes Kyle can get too cute. I'm with you on that.
Don't forget your stars. Don't and make sure and if I was him, I would do it Thursday, before the game on Sunday. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a meeting in an ideal world, coaching staff, offensive coaches. How many touches do we want for George? How many touches do we want for Debo? How many? And then be cognizant of that and try to get close to that in the midst of calling the game. I realize when you're calling the game, you may have to go 3 times in a row to George. You may not. They may be double covering Debo. They may be taking McCaffrey away somehow. But whoever your go-to guy is, whoever's really the healthiest, the best, and the most productive, when you get in the winner's circle, they have to touch the football. It can't be an answer at the end of the game. Hey, man, I didn't realize that Debo hadn't touched the ball in the entire second half, and he was use your players the way they need to be used, or at least as often. All right, Ryan, what's your biggest concern?
Well, building off that, I think McCaffrey kind of changes things just because as much as
he's going to get the ball.
Oh, exactly. That he's like catnip for offensive coordinators. Like you even see it with Carolina. The funny thing is, I was just saying that was a win-win trade because I feel like it kind of opened up Carolina's offense because when you have McCaffrey, there's like this pressure to be like, oh my God, we're paying this running back so much money and he does all this different stuff. Let's just keep getting him the ball. So I think that he's going to kind of mitigate some of that stuff. I guess, my biggest thing is just, I know it's kind of cliche, but just we haven't seen Purdy come back. And let's not even just say Purdy. Let's say Purdy Shanahan. Over this long 8-game streak, we haven't seen them have to come back from, these things happen. It could be, Ray could fumble on a kickoff. They could just get behind early, just turnover luck. So I worry a little bit about the offensive line when they're behind and they have to pass. I'm all good with them as far as running, as long as they're attached in the game. But if they get behind, let's say 10 points in the second quarter, I'm a little worried about if they're playing the Eagles or if they get to the Super Bowl and I don't know, Chris Jones becomes the best player in the entire league every time he plays the Niners. So I guess that would be just my one concern. And then, I do think the Purdy turnover game is coming at some point, and it kind of scares me because we have 2 games left. Or they have 2 games left in the regular season, and both of them were pretty cupcake. So it's is that going to happen in the playoffs? I just want to see how he'll respond to that.
One more thing real quick with finishing to Larry's point, finishing the game with your stars. This is another thing that Kyle has historically done. He kind of forgets about his run game, or it falls apart. And because what you pointed out, Ryan, is what happens if they fall behind? Well, this team doesn't usually. They usually get a lead, and when they've blown it at the end of seasons, is they don't keep the lead. They have a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter and find a way to lose and score no points. And I think what's interesting about this team, of all the Kyle Shanahan teams he's had, he has Jordan Mason now. He has a running back who is specifically built to put away a game that you have a lead in the second half. Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman weren't built to do that in Atlanta. Raheem Mostert wasn't built to do that 3 years ago. Now you have the guy, Kyle. I don't want to see Jordan. I don't want to see Jordan Mason not in the game if there's a 10-point lead in the second half in the Super Bowl. You have the personnel to take this all the way.
Really, he's got 2 backs he can put it away with. He's got Mitchell, who never fumbles and has this great instinct. Then he's got the hammer in the young kid Jordan Mason. All right, give me the position group that you're most nervous about. That if you said, you know what, this position group could cost the 49ers the Super Bowl. Which group is it?
It's either, to me, the offensive line or the secondary, but I'm going to go with the secondary, even though it's the greatest defense ever, because, again, I don't feel like this defense has really been tested. They got tested by Kansas City and it didn't go well, and they've struggled against mobile quarterbacks, struggled against quarterbacks who scramble. They seem to have vulnerabilities deep down the field if you can block long enough and have a quarterback who can get it there. And I think there are a few teams in the league that qualify. And the Niners aren't going to face it this week or next week, but eventually they will. And is Diamador Lenore going to get cooked? How many touchdowns is Talanoa Hufanga going to give because he bit on an underneath route? That's the questions I have with the Niners, I guess, right now. The secondary.
Yeah, Grant, what are you thinking about Hufanga lately? I was just saying, when we were talking about the Pro Bowl, so much of that is just narrative and whatnot. And I think he was so incredible those first, 6-7 weeks of the season. He had all those picks, and everybody wants to make the comp with Palomalu. So like everyone's, got Hufanga on the brain. So now he's a Pro Bowler. But I mean, seriously, the past like 6 weeks or so, he's been really kind of letting up a lot downfield, busting coverage and whatnot. So
yeah, it seems like he might have been a little overrated. I mean, he's on a team with the best front seven.
Yeah.
And what he's doing is taking a lot of chances, knowing that the ball's going to come out quickly most of the time. And that's a good strategy, but I guess it's getting him in trouble now, and teams have tape on him, and they're trying to exploit him, and they're doing it. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the playoffs when teams are really dialed in and you're going against the best quarterbacks in the league. I'm curious, but really, like, Diamador Lenore is a little concerning to me. I mean, Washington gave him no respect. Their attitude was, we're going to take a shot at you at least once a quarter. And I think that they hit one. They could have had three. One was called back off of offsetting penalties. One, Jahan Dotson dropped. So other teams are going to try that. I'm curious about that.
I'm most concerned about, I really love the way if you say what's the most underrated aspect of the Niners this year, I would say it's the play in the interior of Brendel, who was a Pro Bowl alternate, and then Banks and Burford. And then you've seen a little bit of Brunskill at right guard as well. I would say that's been a strength, but I got to say that's my biggest concern is that when they get into that game with Philadelphia and you got Fletcher Cox, enormously strong, Linval Joseph, enormously strong. Yeah. Javon Hargraves had just an incredible year.
He's really good.
Gigantic Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Sue. The size and the force and the power of that line that Philadelphia brings. I'm concerned about Brendel and the young kids, Banks and Burford, giving up pressure in the face of Purdy, because that to me is the game ender. Is if Hargrave lives in that backfield, it's gonna be hard to beat Philly. What do you think?
I agree. That makes sense to me. I said it was either going to be the offensive line or the secondary. I think.
But where is your concern on the offensive line, Grant? Because I know
tackle.
You at right tackle with McGlinchey.
Right tackle. Also, I mean, Burford to an extent. I mean, he's doing a really good job for a rookie fourth round pick, and I think he's got a really bright future when he gets a little bit stronger. But he gave up a pretty quick, easy sack last week. I wonder what it's going to look like. To your point, like when he has to go against guys like Fletcher Cox or Chris Jones. Historically, the Niners' offensive line has crumbled in those situations late in the game. So, yeah, because they don't have premium talent. They punch above their weight. With the exception of maybe the left tackle and the left guard, everyone else is punching above their weight on that offensive line. It's a well-coached unit. But sometimes, really, not guys like Donald. I think the Niners do a good job against Donald. He's undersized and quick. Big, strong dudes can overwhelm certain guys like Burford or McGlinchey or maybe even Brendel.
Yeah, whatever the Niners do to Donald, somehow the exact opposite happens every time they play Chris Jones. So you're probably right.
Yeah.
Donald is an undersized guy, and he's got great movement ability, and I think they just kind of use his movement ability and fool him. Yeah. And I think he takes himself out of the equation a lot.